What does Nicolaitans mean? Nicolaitans is a biblical term which Jesus mentioned in the book of Revelation. Now, let's explain what does Nicolaitans mean. In the Bible, there is a position called priest who has no other duty except serving God. Such people are called priests in the Bible. After Jesus entered heaven, he is still serving God as a priest. A priest is someone who serves God wholeheartedly. God desires all his children to be priests, serving him wholeheartedly. However, many people cling to wealth, power, and relationships, but are not devoted enough. Jesus said, "Anyone who loves his parents, wife, children, brothers, sisters, or anything more than me is not worthy to be my disciple." If you love anyone or anything more than Christ, you are not worthy to be Christ's disciple. Many believers don't meet this condition. When greed arises, those who fear death can't pay the price. As a result, they can only be ordinary believers. Despite believing in God, they still cling to the world. In the Old Testament era, ordinary believers couldn't directly communicate with God. God reached ordinary believers through priests, and ordinary believers had to reach God through priests too. There is a mediator class between God and ordinary believers. This was the situation of believers in the Old Testament era, that is, in Judaism. Priests were the minority, while the majority of believers prioritized family and worldly life. If you say they have no faith, well, they do have some faith, but if you say they are fully devoted, well, they can't reach full devotion. In the New Testament era, that is, after Jesus came, as was recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Such a person, fully blessed by God's grace, has only one vocation: serving God. To deny oneself means to forsake oneself. After becoming a Christian, like Paul, one should hold only one belief: to please Christ. Apart from this, there is nothing else. Christ said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." Caesar was the Roman emperor. However, when it comes to the 4th century, Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and Christianity became the state religion of Rome. As a result, what is Caesar's and what is God's were both given to God. This became a mess. Consequently, since then, the church gradually grew, great changes took place, and lots of people sneaked in. Being a Christian brings worldly benefits. Owing to the state's promotion, being a Christian became trendy, so everyone converted to Christianity. After conversion, they became the emperor's brothers, sharing the same faith. After this change, lots of people joined the church. Some people, despite joining the church, still craved worldly power and held it in their hands. Although they joined the church, they didn't truly serve Christ. On one hand, they followed the crowd. On the other hand, they were seeking God's protection and worldly benefits. Some of them even manipulated other believers, like a dictator. Since then, Christianity ended up like Judaism, hierarchizing believers into God's priests and ordinary believers. This is acknowledging a mediator class, the Nicolaitans. Nicolaitans is mentioned in Revelation chapter 2, where Jesus said, "I hate the practices of the Nicolaitans." When I first read this verse, I felt curious. What is it that even Jesus hates? Jesus has great love, so why even Jesus hates them? Then I did some research and found that there was a group in the church who considered themselves superior to ordinary believers and took control of all spiritual matters. This gave rise to the Mediator Class, which later evolved into systems such as the Pope and Priest system in the Roman Catholic Church, the canonization system in the Anglican Church in England, and the pastor system in the Protestant Church in America. The term Nicolaitans derives from two Greek words. Nikao means to conquer and control, and laos refers to ordinary believers. In the early church, the Ephesian church, some people began to control ordinary believers. As what Paul pointed out in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 24, everyone can take part in service. While those people made the priests, pastors, or other clergy lead the congregation in a pagan manner. Paganism means other religions. Of course, God won't entrust the church to those with political inclinations or sent by a regime. God never hierarchizes the congregation under the leadership of the so-called holy clergy system. Moreover, God's word never mentions that priests, pastors, etc. are mediators between God and humanity. God asks all of us to love him wholeheartedly and serve him together. The Nicolaitans broke these teachings. They differentiated clergy from ordinary believers, turning these leaders into rulers rather than servants of the people. Initially, during the period of the Ephesian church, only a few people were Nicolaitans. However, by the time of the Pergamum church, it had evolved into a group, a party, the Nicolaitans. The actions of a few people became the doctrines of a party, and remarkably, such doctrines, originally against God's will, were legalized and accepted by the church, leading to a system. The behaviors of the Nicolaitans marked the opening of Satan's penetration into the church. This is the way of Satan, keen on controlling others, bossing others around, and lording over others. As time passed, the doctrines of Nicolaism were formed, and the church was almost totally controlled by Satan. In the book of Revelation, Christ exposed and criticized them through prophecy, while in the Gospel of Matthew, he warned us to be mindful. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." This is contrary to the worldly way. Whoever wants to be the leader should serve others. In every aspect, you should lead by example, bear hardships first, and be versatile. You can't just command others, supervise others, and ask others to do this or that, but do nothing yourself. That doesn't work. In our church, you should lead by example in everything. This is what is meant by, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your servant. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus' crucifixion was actually to save humanity. For himself, there was no need to undergo this suffering, but to save humanity and make humanity feel ashamed, he chose to be crucified. This is how Jesus served everyone and eventually redeemed everyone. He didn't ask his disciple to go to the cross, but hide behind himself. This is recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. In the age of grace, there was no way to eradicate Nicolaitanism. Only when it comes to the judgment of the end times, when Christ returns and teaches deeper and higher truths, will the Nicolaitans be conquered. To understand why Nicolaitism came into being, the root and underlying causes behind it need to be explained. Therefore, deeper and higher truths need to be proclaimed, so that everyone, including the leaders, can understand and eventually overcome their own satanic nature, the desire to rule and control others. Only in this way can this problem be ultimately solved. As a Christian, to serve as a priest of God, be fully devoted to God and accepted by God is an honor for us, not for God. This is God's grace. This is the gospel that God gave us when He came into the world. However, many ordinary believers feel that it's impossible to fully devote themselves to God. How can we do this? We still need to make a living. What should we do? In fact, full devotion to God doesn't mean forsaking all other jobs. Some people regard a life of preaching, spreading the gospel, and even remaining unmarried as full devotion to God. This is a misconception. An elder used to tell the young brothers that before following Christ, medical work is a doctor's vocation, nursing is a nurse's vocation, teaching is a teacher's vocation, farming is a farmer's vocation, trading is a merchant's vocation. But keep in mind, once you become a Christian, the nature of your vocation completely changes. All Christians have only one vocation, serving God. From now on, you have become priests of God, and everything you do is for spiritual purposes, for spiritual growth, and for entering the kingdom of heaven after death. Therefore, we should forsake this present life, and all our thoughts, words, and actions should align with God's will. Whatever you do, you should ask yourself, do my thoughts, words, and actions align with God's will? At this time, as a doctor, you are serving God. As a nurse, you are also serving God. Even the vocations such as teaching, farming, trading, etc., can all be serving God. Our vocations don't change, but their nature has changed into a spiritual one. As a doctor, what you think would be no longer the same. Even marriage, starting a family, giving birth to the offspring of humanity and producing children of God can all be forms of serving God, rather than merely fulfilling personal desires. Therefore, the purity of our faith in God determines the nature of all our actions. Is it 100% pure? Even if we can't reach 100% now, we should strive to reach 60% to 70%. If your faith is only 20 or 30% pure, then you are just a casual believer, and most of your thoughts are still worldly. So, every Christian has only one vocation, serving God. If you are a doctor, you can no longer seek to be famous or make more money. Being a doctor is not merely about making a living, but more importantly, to save lives and serve God. When you are saving lives, aren't you exactly serving God? Whatever you do, business, farming, or any other job, you are not seeking fame or gain, but serving God. The nature of everything you do has changed. The king will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. Whatever you do, whether working as a doctor, a nurse, a merchant, etc., if you do it for any insignificant brother, you're doing for Christ. You are serving Christ, serving God. Whomever you serve, you are serving God because you treat them as God. If you treat anyone as you would serve God, aren't you exactly serving God? This is something we can do. However, our pride obstructs us, and our insufficient faith also obstructs us. Those who serve God are naturally blessed. They don't need to seek or toil. As long as you do everything as if you are serving God, you don't need to worry about your sustenance. You can still have a job in the world, which is to serve others, isn't it? When you are serving the people, aren't you exactly serving God? Serving the people is exactly serving God. Nowadays, many people believe in God, but very few people truly serve God. Most people are mainly occupied with worldly matters, family, work, and daily life. They just go to church on Sunday, the Sabbath, occasionally, do some virtuous deeds like donation and volunteering, and thus consider themselves believers. Such people can't enter the kingdom of heaven. In the end times, Christ will come again and restore what he had taught before. Over the past 2,000 years, Christianity has been distorted seriously, and coupled with the development of the age of science, many people have lost their faith. Therefore, the returning Christ will do restoration work and take the restoration path. So, in the end times, God wants all his children to be priests and true Christians. Don't expect someone to serve as a priest for you. You should be a priest yourself. There is no mediator class among us. Nobody will take care of the spiritual matters for you. You should do it yourself. This was the case in Judaism. People would just hire a priest to take care of their spiritual matters. The returning Christ will do restoration work because over the past 2,000 years, Christianity has been distorted seriously without truly serving God. Only very few Christians serve God, but they are nobody. They don't seek fame or gain. Rather, they dedicate their lives wholeheartedly to spreading the gospel. They don't fear anything, including death. They believe they can be with God after death, so they don't fear death at all. They have forsaken their present lives and fully devoted themselves to serving God. In this way, they will undoubtedly be with God after death. If your faith is 100%, then you will definitely be with God after death. The world is full of suffering. So what's the point of loving it?